Vrindavan series, starting from chapter 11. This chapter is called Krishna's Friend the Cloud, and it's based on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, chapter 21, text 16. I'll read the verse itself. Drishtva tepe vraja pashun saharama gopai sancharayantam anuvenu udirayantam prema pravridha udita kusumavalibhi sakyur vyadatsva vapusham buddha atapatram. In the company of Balaram and the cowherd boys, Lord Krishna is continually vibrating his flute as he herds all the animals of Raj, even under the full heat of the summer sun. Excuse me. I'll start again. In the company of Balaram and the cowherd boys, Lord Krishna is continually vibrating his flute as he herds all the animals of Raj, even under the full heat of the summer sun. Seeing this, the cloud in the sky has expanded himself out of love. He is rising high and constructing out of his own body, with its multitude of flower-like droplets of water, an umbrella for the sake of the Lord. So now we'll get into the reading. Krishna's friend, the cloud. Like the exquisite bodily hue of the Prince of Raj, the clouds of Vrindavan are a deep blackish blue and very pleasing to look at. They have the same color as Krishna. During the rainy season, they take special pleasure in reminding all the inhabitants of Vrindavan of the beloved son of Nanda Maharaj by covering the sky with his complexion, showering down a nectarian rain of mercy, and manifesting many peacock feather-like rainbows. Wow, so when people see the storm clouds during the rainy season, they remember Krishna, and the clouds become happy seeing that they're doing the service of reminding people of Krishna, which is the most important service. From their vantage point, the clouds also gain a spectacular vision of Sri Krishna's pastimes, which are shared amongst each other, the Chakravakas and the covered sun. The low rumbling sound heard in the evenings during the month of Shravana are the happy discussion of their recent vision of Govinda. One cloudy evening, the sun set in disappointment at being screened from the view of Sri Krishna's pastimes. To encourage his rising the following morning, some magnanimous clouds narrated a lila recently seen on the banks of the Yamuna River. A special cloud, which shared many of the characteristics of Shyamasundar, began the Krishna Katha that impelled the moon to rise early and secure a place in that august assembly. The peacocks, who were avid admirers of the deep resonance of the cloud's voice, heard the following being said. Nanda Maharaj had such great love for Sri Krishna that a moment's separation from his baby son caused quivering in his body and torrents of tears in his eyes. While herding the cows, he would hold his infant in his arms, and gazing into his beautiful lotus face, he would be overwhelmed with joy. Upon hearing the description of parental love, the clouds billowed in happiness and made many rumbling sounds. This inspired the peacocks to cry to the twilight and the impatient sun to explode in the narrow space between the clouds and the horizon. The sun burst through the crack between the clouds. One day, the king of cowherds visited Bandiravan forest, which is dear to the yogis and whose darshan saves one from the cycle of repeated birth and death. Walking by the shore of the Yamuna, Nanda Maharaj allowed his cows to graze on the luscious grass as he delighted in showing Krishna the moving creatures of the forest. At that time, Sri Krishna, who, although playing the role of a helpless infant, was the self-sufficient, omniscient controller of all, ordered many ominous dark clouds laden with wind and rain to fill the sky. So Krishna wanted these clouds to come. Strong winds humbled the tamal and kadamba trees and spread a great carpet of ripe and unripe fruits everywhere. When a great darkness descended, blinding the cows, forest creatures, and Nanda Maharaj, the frightened infant Krishna began to cry in the arms of his father. Nanda Maharaj became afraid for the welfare of his son, and being far from the shelter of his village and servants, He simply prayed to the Supreme Lord Narayan for protection. Immediately a golden effulgence covered him from all directions, and the king of Gokula saw Sri Radhika in her Kishori form, dressed in blue garments, decorated with many ornaments, and defeating the beauty of many goddesses of fortune, approaching him. Okay. Bowing before the supreme energy of the Lord, Nanda Maharaj said with folded hands, "O goddess, you are the first beloved of Lord Hari, who has now blessed my family by appearing as my son. I take shelter of you. Please protect me." Smiling charmingly, Sri Radha stretched out her arms and took baby Krishna from Nanda, who continued, "O Devi, please take your lord from my arms, for he has become frightened by the clouds, the wind, and the thunder. While I herd the cows back to my village, I request you, please take my son home to his mother, so that he may no longer fear this dreadful situation." Saying, "So be it," Radhika took the baby from Nanda's arms, and holding him affectionately to her breast, started on the path through Bandirvan forest back to Gokul. In a forest grove protected from the elements, filled with the sweetness of spring, and decorated with scented garlands, flags, and festoons, baby Krishna became a wonderful Kishore, splendid as a dark cloud, dressed in yellow garments, holding a flute, and more enchanting than a host of Kamadevs. Admiring each other's enchanting forms with sidelong glances and concealing smiles, Kishora Kishori stood in that grove like a newly formed cloud and its first flash of lightning. Then Lord Brahma, the leader of the demigods, appeared from the sky, riding his swan carrier, and bowing before Lord Krishna, spoke, "Dear Krishna Chandra, who are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, dear Radha, who are his eternal consort, I take shelter of your lotus feet. You are appearing in this world to exhibit your eternal pastimes, and I desire to perform your marriage ceremony, so that ignorant people, misunderstanding your conjugal love, will not commit offenses and bring ruination upon themselves." Smiling, lotus-eyed Sri Krishna took his beloved by the arm and went to a wedding pavilion decorated with kusha grass, water pots, and many other things prepared by Lord Brahma. Sitting on a beautiful throne, Radha Krishna shone like a dark cloud and lightning, while conversing sweetly with each other and the Creator. In the presence of many demigods and forest creatures, Brahma ignited the sacred fire and performed the wedding ceremony of the divine couple. At its conclusion, he requested that they circumambulate the fire and bow down while he chanted sacred mantras. Radhika was very timid in the presence of such august personalities, as she placed her lotus hand on Sri Hari's chest, and Sri Krishna happily lay his hand on Sri Radhika's back. With her downcast eyes emanating a blue radiance, she placed a lotus garland filled with humming bees around Sri Krishna's conch-like neck. In the same way, Sri Krishna playfully placed another garland upon his bride's shoulder, and then once again they bowed before the sacred fire, which was cheerful to be purified by their presence. Like a father gives away his dear daughter, Lord Brahma, who in Sri Radha had exhausted his creative powers to fashion a match suitable for Sri Krishna, gave her away, placing her hand in his. At this, the demigods showered flowers, their wives danced, the Gandharvas sang, and the forest creatures offered glances laden with love. Again and again, the demigods sounded many musical instruments and called out, "Jai, Jai," making an auspicious sound that mixed with the rolling of thunder. Then Radha and Krishna blessed Brahma with devotion and placed their lotus feet on his heads. Lord Brahma's innermost desires having been fulfilled, he mounted his carrier and, accompanied by the demigods and their wives, left that place. Radha and Krishna remained alone with the happy forest animals, who reluctantly returned to their own homes, impelled by the will of Yogamaya. After eating many kinds of foodstuffs prepared by Sri Radha, Shamasundar walked with his new bride through the beautiful forest, gazing at the Yamuna, the flowering vines, and the magnificent trees bowing before them. Playing hide and seek among the groves, Radhika and Madhava pleased each other by their sweetness, kindness, and mutual love. When they reached a very secluded grove, they performed the rasa dance as the thundering clouds kept time to the tap-tap of their lotus feet and the jini-jini of their ankle bells. Sri Krishna decorated his beloved with many flowers, beautiful jewels, and pictures drawn in minerals. When Sri Radha desired to adorn him in the same way, Govinda abandoned his teenage form and again became an infant. Crawling on the ground and crying as before, Sri Krishna was seen by a bewildered Radha who began to cry, saying, "Oh, my beloved, why do you show this illusion to me now? Where have you gone? Where have you gone?" As a despondent Radha wept, a voice from the sky somewhere above us said, "O dearly beloved, do not lament, for in time all your desires will be fulfilled." Hearing this, Sri Radha composed herself and taking the baby in her arms quickly returned to the home of Vraja's queen. What happened when she entered the palace of Nanda, we did not see. However, a Chataka bird informed us that Sri Radha, in the guise of Lord Narayan's internal potency, handed the child to Yashoda and said, "Your husband gave me your fearful son on the path which leads to your village. I entrust him to your care, for he cried in fear of the darkness and the clouds." Mother Yashoda praised Sri Radha, who returned to her own home and took an infant form in the crib of Rishabhanu's palace. Under the influence of Yogamaya, she lost remembrance of all that had happened, and exhausted, fell asleep. When the peacocks heard this wonderful story from the clouds, they responded by raising their beaks to the sky and crying in their customary fashion. While continuing to sing, they danced exuberantly, glorifying the marriage ceremony of Radha and Krishna. The sound of their singing became so tumultuous that both Yashoda Devi in Gokul and Kirtida Devi in Raval entered the bedrooms of their babies to ensure that their children slept undisturbed. When they leaned over them, melting with motherly affection, the queen saw beautiful smiles on their children's faces, and, comforted by their serenity, returned to their own duties. Undisturbed by the kirtan of the peacocks, sleeping in different parts of Vrindavan, baby Radha and baby Krishna dreamt of their marriage ceremony in great transcendental happiness. That's really amazing. At first I was like, what? But now it's clear here that both of them were babies still. They're performing their baby Leela and Brahma Leela. But then they wanted to interact with each other. And of course, as babies, that's not going to happen. Their relationship as lovers happens, after they've grown up a little bit, when they're like, post-pubescent, let's say that. So then Radharani assumed Kishori form, like a 15-year-old girl. And then she came there and rescued baby Krishna. And then Krishna assumed his Kishore form, like a 16-year-old boy. And then they enjoyed each other's company there. And Lord Brahma performed the marriage ceremony while they were still children. So then nobody can complain that Srimati Radharani was unchaste, or that Krishna was acting improperly at any time later in Vraj Leela, because they were married when they were babies. Of course, Gaudiya Vaishnavas don't usually like to think of Krishna as Radha and Krishna to be married, because what Lord Chaitanya taught is that the Parakiya Rasa is the most exalted. So in one sense, it kind of spoils it to think that they're married. But in another sense, the reason that Brahma did it was so that people wouldn't make offenses. So everything has a reason. So I started late today because my internet was bad. I'm using my phone because the Wi-Fi is down. I'll read a little more. Not far from Imli Tala Ghat, in a secluded ashram on the bank of the Yamuna River, stands the serene hut of Raghunath Das Brahmachari. Oh, just a sec. So how were the clouds involved in that last pastime? Is that they made this big storm. The clouds came and they made a huge storm. Otherwise, Nandaraj would have not handed Krishna over to Radharani to take home. It's only because of the storm clouds and the rain and the thunder and the wind. That was all arranged by Krishna, it says. He specifically personally arranged that. And then he pretended that he was afraid. And then Radharani appeared at just the right time to take him home. Not far from Imli Tala Ghat, in a secluded ashram on the bank of the Yamuna River, stands the serene hut of Raghunath Das Brahmachari. Surrounded by many kadamba trees, creepers, and flowers, this abode is the very emblem of Vrindavan's welcome for those aspiring transcendentalists whose ambition is the eternal service of Radha Krishna. The sound of the Yamuna, combined with the singing of the birds and rustling of trees, is the assurance of success in the chanting of the holy names of Sri Krishna. Both humans and animals alike make arrangements to facilitate the saints of Vrindavan, who are the bejeweled decorations on the golden necklace of this enchanted land. Raghunath Das Brahmachari is the disciple of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, the Acharya and eminent leader of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. Under the order of his divine master, he has taken up residence on the bank of the Yamuna and regularly studies the books of the Goswamis while chanting 2 lakhs of Harinam. At the conclusion of the day, having completed his daily sadhana, he does madhukari at 5 houses, accepting whatever is given to him. He then respects 3 rotis as his own allotted quota, and if there is any excess, he distributes that to other bhaktas or to the cows of Vrindavan. Extremely renounced and self-controlled, he is pure in his habits and controlled in his mind, and his speech is always pleasing to everyone. By his sincere efforts in devotional service, he has endeared himself to his spiritual master and all the Vaishnavas of Vrindavan, most notably the eminent scholar and follower of his Gurudev, Govinda Vidyaratna. One day, at the conclusion of the rainy season, toward the beginning of the 17th century Shakabda, Raghunath Das went to visit Sri Govinda Vidyaratna, who was then residing near the samadhi of Lokanath Goswami in the very near proximity of his own ashram. Having become very old, Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti, who now lived at Radhakund, had instructed his dear disciple to take shiksha from Sri Govinda, who was not only highly learned in the master of Vaishnava Shastra, but was a fully realized Mahabhagavat. Dressed in a simple lungi and with a torn quilt around his neck, Raghunath Das approached Sri Govinda, who was seated beneath a large bakul tree, busily engaged in writing. Surrounded by many manuscripts tied in cloth and fully absorbed in his work, the great Vidyaratna was unaware of the young saint who lay prostrate before him, offering sweet words of praise and devotion. When one of his own students, who was the very emblem of Gurunishta, quietly informed Sri Govinda of his guest's arrival, he carefully placed his work to the side. Wrapping his manuscripts in a silk cloth, he rose to his feet and embraced Raghunath Das, with the affection a father shows his most beloved son. Sitting together in a sanctified area, protected from the glare of the afternoon sun, and cooled by breezes scented with blooming flowers, those great devotees exchanged many sweet words full of love and wisdom. After some time, his eyes full of tears, Raghunath Das asked a question with great humility of his beloved Shiksha Guru. Dear Gurudev, I have one question to put to you regarding the nature of Sri Krishna's pastimes. I would be greatly indebted if you could make me understand the proper Siddhanta in this regard. Aware that inquiries from this student were never foolish or frivolous, Sri Govinda patiently addressed him with words full of love and compassion. Our common guide and well-wisher is Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who has petitioned me to guide you in your sincere effort to achieve the Lord's eternal service. When you request something of me, I take it that my beloved Gurudev is speaking. Now, without fear, please tell me what is on your mind, and how it is I may serve you. Raghunath Das, overwhelmed with the kindness and humility of Sri Govinda, began to sob uncontrollably, his body trembling in ecstasy. By the touch of his Gurudev and a concerted effort on his part, he managed to compose his mind and peacefully spoke the following words. He said, Lotus-eyed Shyamasundar is always fully absorbed in his transcendental play with the beautiful girls of Vraj, his parents, his boyfriends, and the cows. He knows neither loss, exhaustion, danger, nor fear, for he has no opportunity to think of anything other than his personal happiness. In this way, he is fully absorbed in fulfilling his unlimited desires and reciprocating with his eternal associates. I understand that this full absorption of love is achieved by the bewildering influence of his own Yoga Maya. Sri Govinda Vidyaratna listened in great happiness, marveling at the devotional qualities of Raghunath Das. Therefore, this question has appeared in my mind. If Sri Krishna is constantly absorbed in his pastimes, and is bewildered by the intense love of his associates, how does he accept the service of his countless devotees who approach him in innumerable countries from different directions? Who hears the prayers of the sincere devotees, sadhakas and siddhas alike, which are offered for his glorification and the perfection of their bhakti? Surely a devotee's service and prayers will never go in vain, for Sri Krishna has said, Yoga Kshemam Vahamyaham. My mind has been bewildered by this apparent paradox. I have full faith that it is the lack of realization on my part which makes that which is wholesome and consistent appear incongruous. Yet without direction from a superior power, I am not able to resolve this self-imposed dilemma. Holding his hands and remembering the lotus feet of Guru and Gauranga, Sri Govinda said, so before I get into his answer, just to clarify the question here is that Krishna is so busy with his pastimes, his pleasure pastimes, with his associates reciprocating with their loving exchanges and services. So how does Krishna have time for the sadhakas of this world who approach him and pray to him? How does he manage to hear all their prayers? Okay, so Sri Govinda says, due to a poor fund of knowledge, many scholars misunderstand the human-like pastimes of Sri Krishna. When Damodar runs from his mother, they suggest that he is feigning fear and shedding crocodile tears. In order to maintain his omniscience, they make the Lord into an actor and deprive him of his true prerogative of complete absorption in his Leela. To correct such a misunderstanding, Srila Chakravarti Pad has written of the Lord's behavior in his newly composed book, Raga Vartma Chandrika. This same book he has given to this humble self for editing. I shall now cite the perfect reasoning given by our Gurudev in this regard. Referring to a manuscript by his side and fully enlivened by the prospect of resolving a common quandary of the Vaishnavas, Sri Govinda, the crown jewel of Vaishnava scholars, continued. Srila Vishwanath has addressed the common answer tendered by some devotees to this question. They reason that Krishna's expansion, Paramatma, the Supersoul, residing in everyone's heart, hears the prayers of the surrendered devotees and reciprocates with their service, while he remains absorbed and undisturbed in his limitless sports. Our Gurudev refutes this proposal. He argues that Paramatma displays Krishna's pastime as the witness, Sakshi, and the bestower of karmic fruits, Anumanta. However, he is not empowered to reciprocate with the moods of the Raganuga Bhakta, who is solely devoted to Sri Krishna. Furthermore, since a Vraj Bhakta is not satisfied by the reciprocation of Lord Ramachandra or even Lord Narayan, then their partial expansion, Paramatma, will certainly not satiate their mood. Such answers by scholars are inconsistent with the proper interaction of mellows between the devotee and the Lord. Giving his own answer, Chakravarti Pad affirms that Sri Krishna, Rajendra Nandana Sham, will hear the prayers of the devotees and bestow the results of their service. There can be no alternative to this. But how he does so while engaged in the bonds of prema and oblivious to his godhead is a great mystery. The answer lies in the analysis of Sri Krishna's two qualities known as Mugdha and Sarvagya. Mugdha refers to the total bewilderment he feels under the stupefying influence of his devotee's love, and Sarvagya is his natural characteristic of omniscience. Both these qualities exist in him simultaneously, and by his inconceivable potency, he is overpowered by the love of Yashoda while being concurrently the all-knowing Supreme Person. In support of this argument, consider the statement of Uddhava Mahashaya in the third kanda of the Bhagavatam, where he says, Mantreshu mam va upahua yatvam. He says, O my Lord, your eternal self is never divided by the influence of time, and there is no limitation to your perfect knowledge. Thus you are sufficiently able to consult with yourself. Yet you called upon me for consultation, as if bewildered, although you are never bewildered, and this act of yours bewilders me. So Uddhava is saying that you're the all-knowing Supreme Personality of Godhead, but you consulted me for advice, as if you were bewildered, although you're never bewildered, and this is bewildering to me. Krishna is the all-knowing person, simultaneously aware of all karmas in all phases of time. Why then does he ask Uddhava for advice? as if bewildered by the dilemma of attending the Rajasuya Yajna and disposing of Jarasandha simultaneously. Uddhava states that this behavior of the Lord is not a pretense, but his actual state of being. Krishna exhibits both qualities of mukta, knowing nothing, and sarvagya, knowing everything, at the same time. This is truly wonderful. Becoming overwhelmed by the inconceivable qualities of his beloved Lord, Sri Govinda became momentarily stunned, and tears flowed from his eyes, moistening the ground. Composing himself, he continued once again, glancing at the manuscript before him. Mugdha should not be mistaken as the action of the material energy Maya. It is the function of Sri Krishna's own prema. As the servants of the Lord have one-pointed absorption in him, by dint of his attachment for his devotee, known as his Bhakta Vatsalya, he becomes equally oblivious to everything other than them. While lying in the lap of his mother, when absorbed in wrestling with Sridham, when dancing with the gopis, by the exclusive provision of their love, he knows nothing but them, but still he knows everything. As Lila Shuka writes, Charanai sarvagyatve chamogde chasarvabomam idam maha iti. In all his pastimes, the Lord is simultaneously bewildered and omniscient. How this takes place by the force of his own Yogamaya is certainly inconceivable. Looking at Raghunath Das with great affection, Sri Govinda says, the conclusion is as follows. Sri Krishna is fully preoccupied with himself and does not feign anthropomorphic symptoms, but actually experiences ignorance of his divinity, while contemporaneously being the all-omniscient Supreme Person. By his inconceivable potencies, he remains aware of the service and prayers of his devotees, and never fails in his promise to reciprocate with them, regardless of how minute their devotion may be. Speechless at the irrefutable logic of his argument, Raghunath Das could only fold his hands before his preceptor and bow his head. To hear this great proponent of devotional science speak, the demigods, headed by Yamaraj, had assembled in the sky above. Invisible to all, they too became speechless and just looked at each other in happiness. To signify their pleasure at such conclusive truths, they scattered parijata flowers on the devotees below. Those flowers appeared like the light sprinkling of rain, and roused the devotees to take shelter of the overhanging branches of the bakul tree. Folding the manuscript in a cloth and then placing it in a wooden box, well protected from the elements, Sri Govinda said, my dear beloved, I have answered your question according to the most authoritative version given by the acharyas of our sampradaya. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. You should have no doubt in this regard. The words of liberated souls are as infallible as the Vedas themselves. I accept whatever our Gurudev has written as non-different from the words of the all-perfect Vedavyas. You too should do the same. Seeing that the afternoon rains had begun, Sri Govinda leaned against the trunk of the tree and, with his japamala in his hands, began to silently chant the holy names of the Lord. Raghunath Das followed suit, sitting at the lotus feet of his guru. After some time passed and the rain continued, Sri Govinda quoted one verse from the Bhagavatam, well known to his disciple. Dristva tepe rajapashun saharama gopai sancharayantam anuvenum udirayantam prema pravridha udita kusamavalibi sakyur vyadatsva vapashambuddha atapatram. So this is the verse that this chapter is based on. In the company of Balaram and the cowherd boys, Lord Krishna is continually vibrating his flute as he herds all the animals of Raj, even under the full heat of the summer sun. Seeing this, the cloud in the sky has expanded himself out of love. He is rising high and constructing out of his own body, with its multitude of flower-like droplets of water, an umbrella for the sake of his friend. Knowing that Sri Govinda had committed to memory the teachings of all the acharyas, eager to hear his explanations of loving devotion, and understanding that his preceptor's mind was now softened with the remembrance of Krishna's Vraj Leela, in a tone full of submission, Raghunath Das said, Dear Gurudev, you have quoted a shloka glorifying the service of the clouds. In what ways have our acharyas understood the words of the Rajagopis? who is held in highest esteem by Lord Gaurasundar, Sri Sridhar Swami, says that the qualities of the clouds are Loka Arti Harana, or that which removes the distresses of the world. Just see how magnificent these clouds are, who freely give themselves to others. Summarizing this verse, the Acharyas state that the clouds have risen above Krishna. To shelter him from the glare of the midday sun, they expand themselves, increasing in size by the force of their love. Puna Prema Pravridha. Inspired by the peacocks, who offer their feathers as gifts, the clouds make flower offerings to Sri Krishna in the form of a very fine drizzle. Then, with their own bodies, they act like an umbrella, serving their dear friend in this way. Looking skywards, Sri Govinda said, as always, his commentary is concise and to the point. It is the sutra which forms the basis of other acharyas' commentaries. They will expand on what Sridhar Swami says, but will never attempt to surpass it. In the time of our beloved Gauranga, there were great scholars who thought they would better his commentaries and acquire great acclaim among learned circles. Such an attitude was never approved by the Lord, and he rejected such upstarts from his association as one would prostitutes. Following his example, we should never hear any topics from such teachers, regardless of their learning and erudition. Pausing for a moment, Sri Govinda then continued. Srila Sanatana Goswami is the dearest associate of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. His Brihad Vaishnav Toshani commentary is like an iridescent row of pearls decorating the lotus face of Srimad Bhagavatam. When he speaks, not only the Gandharvas, Kinnaras, and elevated demigods, but also the inhabitants of Vaikuntha abandon their services and sit attentively to hear his words. Now hear how he describes the ecstasy of the gopis who have assembled to describe the glories of the flute. Should I stop here? Maybe. I'll read a little bit more. Let's see what the gopis say. Observing the clouds above Krishna, a group of gopis says, certainly the Kalindi, Manasi Ganga, and the other rivers that flow to the sea are fortunate, having witnessed the wonderful pastimes of Sri Krishna. Megasya Pibhagyam Kivarnam. What is the acquired good fortune of the clouds, which are achetana prayasya, generally not conscious entities, and little more than vapor in the sky? Sri Sanatan accentuates two phrases pertaining to Sri Krishna. They are Gopai Sancharayantana and Anu Venum Udirayantam. And they can be understood in two ways. With the word Yadvat, Sanatana Goswami always offers alternative readings, revealing the diverse views of different elevated devotees. I think this is going to get long here. I think I'll stop here because it's already, we started late, but now I've gone late. So I think we've done half an hour, maybe a little more. So thank you all for listening, and stay tuned tomorrow as we hear this conversation between the gopis about Krishna's friends, the clouds. Jai Shri Venu Gita Jai.